The city is fallen, Alfred.
Then we must endeavor to lift it up again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fandom United. Gio here. I am joined by my fellow movie podcaster, Mr. Jacob Bartley. And today we are talking about Batman The Long Halloween Part 1, which just released a couple days ago. I got a chance to see it. Jacob got a chance to see it. Before we dive into it, Jacob, hello. Thank you so much for joining me on the Fandom United once again. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty well, man. Nothing like starting your morning with a comic book movie. Like that's it. One of the best things in the world to me is waking up in the morning and watching a movie. So that's what I did with this one. Well, I finished it this morning, but still, I had a good time, and I'm excited to talk about it. And I'll tell you what, we talked about this a little last night. Even if they're not great, and I'm not talking about this movie specifically, but just animated, these, VOD animated films, comic book movies, right? Even if they're not great, I love watching these movies. I watched a ton of them, in the past, 6, 7, 8 years. And to me, it's like for casual, comic book readers, they're kind of an easy way into comic book lore because these animated films stick more true to the comic book stories than the live action movies do. So it's a way to learn about comic book characters and mythologies and things like that. So that's why I really appreciate movies like this.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, man. DC Animation has, for a long time, done a great job with producing these movies based off of comics, or even not, going back to Mask of the Phantasm, which was a great one in my opinion. And then you have Under the Red Hood. I mean, there's so on and so on.
I've seen most of them. Under the Red Hood, The Dark Knight Returns.
Yes.
I even like some of the newer ones. Like I thought Son of Batman was cool. I was a little disappointed by the what was the recent one that was in theaters? We saw it in theaters. The Killing Joke. Yeah, I was disappointing in that. I think we both were.
You're not alone. Yeah. But hey, this one, Batman The Long Halloween, is based on the 13-issue comic series written by Jeff Loeb and with art by Tim Sale. This was back in 96, 97. So it's been about 25 years going into 2021, the summer of 2021. And so what we'll do here is give a quick synopsis rundown, and then we'll go through the movie and we'll talk about it. So Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 takes place during Batman's early days of crime fighting. The Long Halloween tells the story of a mysterious killer named Holiday who murders people on holidays, one each month. Working with District Attorney Harvey Dent and Captain James Gordon, Batman races against the calendar as he tries to discover who Holiday is before he claims his next victim each month, while attempting to stop the crime war between two of Gotham's most powerful families, Maroni and Falcone. The Long Halloween continues the story of Batman Year One. It also revolves around the transition of Batman's rogues gallery from simple mob goons to full-fledged supervillains, and tells the origin of Two-Face. Now, this is obviously Batman The Long Halloween Part 1. I did read the 13-issue comic series a couple months ago, and I just want to make sure I get this right, Jacob. You have not read it, so you're coming in fresh on the story, correct?
Yeah, I have not read it. It's been one that I've been wanting to read, but after watching this, of course, I wish I would have read this, but after watching for this viewing experience, I'm glad I haven't read it because it gives me a different perspective. Like I'm watching the story for the first time. And like I said, these animated features are way more stick to the original comic book storylines than live action do. So I'm pretty sure, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure it's very similar if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there are some changes that we'll get into, minor ones.
I'll say that's okay.
The what?
To make small changes. Like
Yeah,
it's an adaptation, so that's
right.
okay.
And I was reading something about the writer of this movie, and what he said was sometimes the things that are on a comic panel don't exactly translate for a cinematic experience.
Exactly.
So I think it's okay to, take some liberties here and there, just as long as you're not changing the overall major plot points of a story. So obviously we'll get into that in detail. But for now, let's talk about Batman The Long Halloween Part 1.
A killer who only works on holidays. There's lots of crazy out there.
So, Jacob, we've obviously talked about, where we're coming from with this movie. I know what the story is. You're coming into it for the first time. So, I'm really curious your overall thoughts on Batman The Long Halloween Part 1, the story, the way it presents these characters that we are obviously that we know about that are iconic. What'd you think, man?
I really enjoyed this as far as part one goes. And
Nice.
knowing that it's titled part one, I think you have to go into it knowing obviously it's not going to end with the story concluded, right?
Hmm.
Obviously. So I don't even think it's not like they didn't tell us there's a part one and part two. They did. So, and we know it's coming in about a month. So you can do that with this movie. Like if they just released this and didn't say anything and that's how it ended, I could see people complaining, but it's a part one. So as far as the first half of this story goes, I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm guessing from the image in our background, I see some July 4th, February 14th dates on there. I figured, oh, holiday must continue. And I guess Valentine's Day is next up, unless he does one of the holidays before that. So I'm excited for that. But overall, I enjoyed it because it captured what makes the Batman mythology so great, which is, obviously in general, in most stories, Batman exists with Superman out there in the world somewhere, Wonder Woman out there in the world somewhere. But when you can just focus on Batman and Gotham and his characters and rogues gallery, I really like that because it is the closest thing we'll get to like a mob movie in comic book superhero genre. So to me, and we've seen elements of this in the live action films, obviously, especially like the Dark Knight movies and some of the other ones. But to me, this really felt like a mob movie with Batman involved.
Yes.
And it was just really cool, like that element of it, because imagine like they could tell this story. Like if this was just a mob movie and there was no Batman in it and you were still telling the story about this family, the Falcones, like you could just tell a story about that as a mob movie. So now that it's like incorporated with this superhero and these supervillains, I think it set something up really cool. And you can't really do that with most other comic book characters.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I love that they gave kind of a Godfather like inspiration to
that's how it felt a little bit.
Yeah, the Falcone family, where Carmine Falcone is the Don. I mean, literally in one of the opening scenes, it says address him as Godfather, and he didn't. And what happened? He got thrown off the I don't know, one of the crime member families, I guess, got thrown off the stairwell and died. So they put an emphasis on respect, on not getting in the way of the family business, but also not turning your back on family. And we've seen that, and it's one of my favorite parts about the Long Halloween Part 1, especially the opening scene. You mentioned how it involves a crime mob, the mob families, the organizations, and Batman, but also Bruce Wayne. I mean, it opens with Bruce Wayne visiting Carmine Falcone and being like, look, I'm only here out of respect for my father. And other than that, I know I'm a big, deal in Gotham City. Of course, the Wayne foundation, and it's Bruce Wayne just being in this predicament where, he has a name to live up to thanks to his father, but he's also trying to clean up the streets and be this new Batman.
I'll build off what you were just talking about. I really loved how it was younger Batman days, because it's weird. Like, I know there's a lot of younger Batman days in the comics, but as far as live action goes, and which is most people's experience with Batman, it's been mostly when he's older. If you think about it, even what's the youngest Batman we got? The Christian Bale one, and obviously in Batman Begins, right? In live action.
Yes.
So, and that's it. And then basically those movies skip a lot of years in between, right? So by the time we get to Dark Knight Rises, he's in his 40s. So we never really get to see a lot of young Batman. And obviously we're getting that with The Batman, which whatever year it comes out next year, right? It's my most anticipated movie that year. I don't care what else comes out. It's my most anticipated movie. Because that looks incredible. But I like seeing this younger Batman because he's inexperienced and he's not even a detective yet. And I loved that storyline where everybody keeps telling him, "Oh, you're not much of a detective, are you?" I think one of the mob men say that. And this is basically Batman realizing, I can't just go around and beat people up. Like, I have to put my brain to work and figure things out and use my intelligence to clean up the streets just as much as I use my gadgets and my strength and my fighting skills. So that part, him realizing that he needs to become a detective, was one of my favorite parts of this movie, for sure.
Yeah, and again, going back to, Batman in his early crime fighting days, I thought there were some great lines of dialogue in this movie. And one of them you didn't mention, where, Batman has to come to the realization that he's going to have to be not just a good detective, but maybe the world's greatest detective.
Yeah.
Just to, fight crime in a city like this, because one of the henchmen mentioned that, hey, ever since you came to Gotham City, it's not just mobs anymore. We got Killer Crocs, we got Jokers now, clowns. Everything has changed now that you have arrived. And Batman realizes that. One of the early lines was from Alfred, not early, but somewhere in the middle in the movie. Alfred says, "I believe Batman will be what the world needs him to be." And we obviously got that in the live action movie The Dark Knight, where I'm whatever the world needs me to be.
That moment really reminded me of The Dark Knight.
Yeah, and it's just, man, like it understands who Batman is, and it takes its time exploring his early struggles, trying to learn what it is to be the Batman, not just somebody who hurts people, like you said. So I completely agree. Sticking with Batman, I really enjoyed the relationship between Batman and Catwoman. I mean, there's a great chase sequence through the city that they go through, but just the dynamic between the two, it's pretty much revealed that they know who each other, they know who each of them truly is. I mean, at one point, Selena says on the boat, "Bruce," and it's like, what are you doing?
So the scene where they broke up, and I'm doing quotations, broke up, like, because Batman and Catwoman would interact in the streets together, and then Bruce Wayne and Selena were actually dating, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the movie. But did Bruce know that she knew that they knew who each other were? I'm not sure. I think he kind of realized it at the same time, like when she during that conversation.
It was a shock to him to hear her say that. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And I always think, like, come on now, like, you get that close up to somebody, you can just see their facial features and their body language, and that it's them. Like, so, and Catwoman's a smart, very intelligent person, so like she knew that it was Bruce Wayne, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. One of the things that part one really does well is it shows not just because we talked about the impact of fighting crime in a city like Gotham for Bruce Wayne, but it also shows us what it's like for Harvey Dent and his family, and James Gordon, and his
Mhm.
trying to he was just named commissioner, the captain, and I like that we get to see the struggles of these characters trying to balance of a life of family with crime fighting. How'd you feel about that, specifically with Harvey Dent and James Gordon?
Yeah, they are basically, honestly, as far, outside of the Batman suit, they might have had more screen time than Bruce Wayne did. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
than
yeah.
actual Bruce Wayne.
Hmm.
So I felt like these were, we all know the Batman story and the struggles that he goes through, but it was kind of cool to see these two characters and their family life and all that, and to see what they're kind of going through. They're kind of the regular humans out in the world, as far as we know, and they're just trying to survive in this crazy city, and obviously they have very high ranking and dangerous jobs as well.
Hmm.
And so when I first started the movie, and like, look, I didn't know anything, right? I just went into it pretty blind, and I loved seeing them on the roof, them three on the rooftop together, like working together. And I love how Gordon says, I'm putting you two, like I'm assigning you two to work together, basically. And I forget what Harvey Dent says, but then Batman says, two minds are better than one. And I just thought that was so cool. I was like, this is kind of badass, like seeing these three guys work
Hmm.
together. And I know we got a tiny bit of that in the Dark Knight, a little bit, but I would love to see like a younger version of them all working together like this. Like it was kind
Hmm.
of cool in a way. And obviously, if if you're looking at DC lore, if this exists in the whole DC universe, this is before Batman ever worked with the Justice League, I'm
Oh yeah.
assuming. So this is him kind of first time working with a team in a way, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. You were spot on, except the line was two heads are
Well,
better
I
than
mean,
one.
that's
And
the
the reason
same
why
thing.
I bring that up is because no, because you talked about a moment that I really liked, and something I appreciated. So the line two heads are better than one, it later played a role in them trying to decide how do we adjust and fight this crime family, because we've been trying to do things a certain way, but then you see, like, in the beginning there was somebody who was going to be an essential part of a court case. He was going to testify against the Falcone crime family, but he gets offed, and Harvey Dent is taking bat. Oh, he's his journey to obviously serving justice takes a significant step back. But then they have a moment where they decide by the toss of a coin. I love the foreshadowing. I
Yeah.
love how it presents this kind of situation between these characters who are trying to do the right thing, but then are like, okay, Gordon told us bend the rules, don't break the rules. And so they're trying to decide what that means exactly. And I love the foreshadowing of the coin flip and how that line that you said, two heads are better than one, and how it plays into the coin flip.
Well, yeah, I loved it. It was an ongoing theme throughout the whole movie, and
Mhm.
it's not only foreshadowing Harvey Dent and Two Face, Batman and Bruce Wayne. He's basically his own Two Face in a way when it comes to his identity, Batman and
Oh
Bruce
yeah.
Wayne.
Mhm.
So I mean, I knew this, but it kind of made me think more about how much Harvey Dent kind of reflects Batman in a way, and they always play like the White Knight and the Dark Knight type thing, and they balance that out in the city of Gotham. So it was pretty cool to see that. And not knowing anything about this story, I was like, they really played with you and making you think that he was going to become Two-Face in this movie.
Mhm.
And they even play with like shadows and have him turn his face, and you think that his face is damaged, but it's not.
I love
And
the lighting of that.
yeah, and
Beautiful
they
choice.
in the hospital when he was on the hospital bed, you couldn't see the left side of his face from the way the angle was. So I loved how they played with that, and it was a perfect setup. Knowing that we're getting a part 2, they teased just enough of Two-Face. So yeah, that I love that stuff. It was great, and when they did the coin flip, I was like, wow, that was the like first time that he kind of does this, and it all ties into Batman too. So that's pretty cool.
Not really a spoiler, but something the person who wrote this for adapting it to an animated movie, what he said was this part 1 and part 2 is very much two sides of the same coin. Part 1 is the unscratched version, whereas part 2 will be that other side of the coin where the coin is damaged, obviously. And I'm like, yes, like I love that they decided to split this into 2 parts. One, because it's the 13 issue comic series, but it also allows for the villains to, have their stories more fleshed out. And someone that I grown to appreciate as I both read the comic and got to see it played out in animation is the relationship between Alberto and who is the son of Carmine Falcone, the one who Carmine tried to keep away from the family business, who doesn't exactly get the recognition, respect, and love that he wants from his dad. The relationship between Alberto and Carmine Falcone, how important was that in your mind, Jacob, looking back on how it was told in this movie?
Yeah, so that was one of my favorite parts of the movie. It was that, like we said, the crime family aspect of it, and very similar to The Godfather. I mean, I don't know, is that story told the same way in the comics?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, every mob movie and a lot of movies are influenced by The Godfather, but literally, like he was sent off he was at school, and then he wasn't with the family, and then he comes back and he doesn't think that he fits in with this. He wanted to kind of just be normal, but as we saw in The Godfather, you kind of get forced into it. And I think eventually, if I don't know first names of the characters, but if the son,
Alberto,
Alberto,
I got you.
there it is, Alberto. If he didn't die, spoiler, I'm sure he would have eventually, even though his dad was giving him a hard time, I think his dad deep down wanted him to become the big part of the family going forward. But I think he was trying to have him take the tough road to get there. And that was an interesting plot point. And I thought, like I said, you could have just told that story and I would have been intrigued. So the part that it was like just an element of this whole movie was really cool. And I think even if you're not like in the mob or whatever, I think a lot of people can relate with that, like disappointing parents and not living up to what their parents want them to be. So I think that was a really good storyline.
Yeah, and one great example of what you were talking about was when Carmine is cooking dinner, and the son is like, "Hey, Dad, I did this in the name of the family," and he's like, "Don't ever do that again." Literally
The
grabs his son.
flowers.
And to your point, he's trying to teach him like a lesson, like you don't ever speak for the family, especially while I'm the Don. That is so disrespectful. And yeah, it's tough love, but in the context, it makes perfect sense. So sticking with the villains, we'll wrap up here pretty soon. Who are some standouts to you? I want to start first and talk about, and maybe you have the same, standouts as far as villains go. Calendar Man. First off, voiced by Mr. David Dasmalchian from, he was an Ant-Man. He plays the Russian. He will be in the Suicide Squad as Polka Dot Man.
Yep.
I thought even though he was only on screen for a limited amount of time, immediately the voice, I was like, yes, that is what I would picture from someone like Calendar Man, especially in this storyline where he is a huge suspect given the holiday killer kills on holidays. You would think someone like the Calendar Man, who could very well still be the guy, But for me, he was a clear standout. Did you have any standouts?
Well, absolutely Calendar Man for sure.
Mhm.
It's like I know who Calendar Man is, and obviously, in all comics, Marvel, DC, everything, there's cheesy characters that were created with their concepts and their names, right? Like there's literally a condiment man in the comics who like uses mustard and ketchup as weapons, right? So Calendar Man can be portrayed as silly sometimes, but not in this movie.
Yeah.
I loved the portrayal of Calendar Man because it made it more of a psychological thing where like dates and the flow of the calendar and the 12 months of the year, like all of that to him is like he's similar to the Riddler where like he uses his mind and he's all obsessed with these, like the Riddler's obsessed with clues and riddles and stuff, right? This guy's obsessed with dates and timelines and things like that, and that's how he kind of puts stuff together. So I like how they portrayed that. It showed me that you can take, and maybe he's in the comic, I don't know, but it showed me that you can take a character that's like maybe not the best in the comics and like make them seem really cool if you adapt them a little bit. So I really like, as far as like a character who had very minimal screen time but had a huge impact, he was probably the number one in that sense.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's heavily teased that Harvey Dent will go down that path.
Yeah.
So we can't exactly talk about that yet. Maybe in part 2, it'll be like a clear standout should it go down that road. Trying not to spoil anything for
you
you.
can't look at, there's no Two-Face in this movie in this one. So he's just Harvey Dent as far as we know, but there are definitely hints towards him being a madman for sure. But I mean, Selena Kyle, Catwoman's not really a villain. She is at times, sometimes. She can be an antagonist to Batman a lot, but I really enjoyed her. Rest in peace to Naya Rivera. We were just talking about that.
Shout out. Yeah.
That story was so tragic. I remember when I heard it, and then when they had the little tag at the end of the movie, it kind of made you remember like who she was and what happened. So, and we were talking, they must have recorded this a long time ago. If she completed this movie, I wonder if she completed part 2. I'm really curious.
I believe she did. Let me just quickly check on that while you continue.
I mean, obviously none of us would have any problem if they got another actress to finish it for her, right? That's what they would have to do. But it would be kind of cool if she finished the whole thing. But yeah, they've obviously done this a lot in the comics, in the just in a lot of stuff. We heard some stuff about Batman and Catwoman and the Harley Quinn season 3 coming up. So I am, Batman doesn't really have a definitive love interest like Spider-Man does, or even like Iron Man does, right? Or even Superman. Superman is synonymous with Lois Lane. They literally have had TV shows, but
they have a show right now. Yeah.
In history named with Lois Lane in the title, right? So Batman doesn't really have a female love interest that he's associated with, but I've accepted Catwoman, Selena Kyle, as that character, and I love it because is he going to relate much with a regular human woman who is just out in the world, a lawyer or whatever. Rachel was a lawyer in The Dark Knight, right?
Rachel Dawes, yeah.
Yeah. So I like him and Catwoman being love interest. And we've seen, I forget the storyline, but in the comics, he proposed to her. It's on the cover of one of the comics from a few years ago. So I've accepted, like, to me, Selena Kyle is Bruce Wayne's, main girl. And I kind of like seeing that because they have very similar dynamics, right? They both dress up in dark black and go out at night, and she's maybe stealing stuff, but she's also, she has a good heart, because why would she try to figure all this stuff out and help Batman and stuff if she didn't. Like, she wants to take down the Falcones probably too, but she's not a bad person though. So I really enjoyed their dynamic for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. They were a clear highlight in this movie. And again, to echo what you said, Naya Rivera, when I found out, it was just, it's tough, but she did such a great job as Selena Kyle, Catwoman. She's coming back for part 2. She did voice the character for part 2.
That's awesome.
So it's going to be great to see. Some other standouts before we end it here. Joker. He's upset that Holiday is taking all the fun. So he's trying to do what he can.
I thought that was a funny way to incorporate Joker.
Right.
On Joker real quick, so is Joker in the 13 issue run?
Yes.
He is? Okay. So I thought it was pretty funny. Joker, obviously I love the Joker. He's the greatest comic book villain of all time. No question. But he's a little silly sometimes. He doesn't know how to fly the plane. What if you crash? You're going to die. And I know he always is not concerned about dying, right? But what if he does die? He did a backflip out of a window, and I love how you hear him hit the floor. It's like, ugh. And then he damn, Joker, you got to be more careful, man. You want to see out your master plans, or just be the only, serial killer in Gotham or whatever? You got to be careful, man.
Yeah.
But he was fun though. I like how crazy he is, because he's like, oh well, I'm just gonna gas the whole street. Maybe Holiday's down there,
right?
Maybe not. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting to see. I hope you're excited. I mean, I'm sure you're excited for part 2.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I want to watch it right away.
I can't wait to talk about the whole story with you. We'll definitely get there. Some other standouts real quick. We'll rapid fire. Jack Quaid from The Boys. He voiced Alberto, and I thought that was
nice.
That was a pretty cool decision to cast.
Yeah, the voice cast is cool.
Yeah, and then Josh Duhamel, who played Lennox in the Transformers movies as Harvey Dent, did a great job. Huge credit to why I enjoyed seeing this Harvey Dent on screen. And as far as changes in the film goes, at least for part 1, the Chinese Triad gang, in the comics, it was an Irish gang, but the writers decided to change it for some diversity. They wanted to try and diversify as much as they could without taking away, and they saw that as an opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, the change felt relevant in today, for today's world. And there was also this thing about a summer wedding that wasn't shown in part 1, but maybe they changed that, and we get that in part 2. So who's to say? But I'm gonna end it here because my screen is freaking out, and I'm worried about this stream. I will try to do better on the next one.
It looks normal on my end.
Am I frozen or no?
No, it looks completely normal on my end.
Okay, that's what matters here.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to Jansen Eccles though, who voiced Batman. He's from Supernatural.
Yeah. He was also Jason Todd in Under the Red Hood as well, and he's Soldier Boy in season 3
in The Boys.
Of The Boys. Yeah.
But yeah, man. Overall, as far as animated, straight to VOD DC film, I love this movie, and I can't wait for part 2. Like I said, I want to look it up what happens and ask you, but I don't, so I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, and afterwards, after you watch part 2, I'll let you borrow the comic series so that I can read
absolutely,
through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for joining me. You can find him on Twitter at JacobBarley824. His YouTube channel is First Round Fantasy, fantasy football podcast. Football season's right around the corner.
Oh yeah,
definitely check it out. And he does Off the Grid, a Power Rangers podcast. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, talk a lot of comics on there and anything going on in the world of Power Rangers.
Absolutely. That's awesome. You guys can find him there. Gio here from Fandom United. Obviously, I appreciate you guys' time and subscriptions. Please do leave a like, thumbs up if you did enjoy this discussion. Share your thoughts as well, whether you've read the comic or have not. We'll be back next month for part 2. Jacob, I would love to have you back, and we will finish this.
I have to be here, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. You have to be here. It's in the contract, sir. So that'll do it for our discussion. Thanks again, Jacob. Thank you to all of you who are watching. Appreciate your time and subscriptions. We'll see you next month for Batman The Long Halloween Part 2. Until then, take care.